much. A very good morning to you. This is Morning Cafe. I'm Truly Stanley Iringita. Before we continue with our day's programs, just to update you on President William Ruto's visit to the United States of America. The past 2 days he has been in Atlanta, Georgia, but then as of yesterday he visited Washington, D.C. and George Maringa unpacks this whole event for us just when he arrived at with the First Lady, Rachel Ruto, and all events later on. Take a look.
Of all the foreign trips that President William Ruto has made and of all the countries he has set foot in, even he will admit that the state visit to the United States of America is quite different. More so coming from a country which last rolled out the red carpet for an African head of state nearly 2 decades ago. Come Wednesday morning, after an intense 2 days in the Southwest, Kenya's president left Atlanta, Georgia, inbound for Washington, D.C. The plane touched down a few minutes to 11 a.m. local time, much to the anticipation of their host, First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden, who received them on the airport tarmac. And just like in Atlanta, when the plane door opened, hands locked with First Lady Rachel Ruto, the pair, step by step, disembarked from the aircraft, this time with their daughters in tow. Joint Base Andrews, a military facility located in Prince George's County, Maryland, provided the perfect ambience for a reception full of ceremonial state honors, including a guard of honor, as the 3-day state visit to the U.S. officially kicked off. All 3 stanzas of the Kenya national anthem were played, followed by the U.S. anthem. A state visit such as this one is the most intimate visit that the U.S. can offer to another country. Ruto is also the first African head of state to be accorded a state visit from the Biden administration, and his visit to the U.S. comes at a time when Kenya and the U.S. mark 60 years of diplomatic relations. From Joint Base Andrews, next stop for President Ruto and his delegation was the Library of Congress. Here, the head of state made 2 appeals to Congress. First, to renew the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA, as well as to replenish the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR.
I am very proud that 60 years on, we have built this relationship, and today we celebrate what we can do together in the face of the challenges that face us as humanity. Challenges of the wars everywhere, we all know, in Ukraine, in Middle East, in the Horn of Africa, even the one in your neighborhood in Haiti. We have serious security challenges. But all this requires collaboration, partnership, and global leadership. We also have an opportunity during my visit to discuss on the real possibilities and opportunities for trade, for investment, for conservation, and many others that are mutually beneficial to humanity, to the United States, and to Kenya.
Shortly afterwards, Ruto headed to the White House, where he was welcomed by President Joe Biden. The two participated in an economic roundtable with the CEOs from both countries in the East Room.
We have a historic moment to explore investment opportunities between Kenya and the United States. And Mr. President, under your leadership, we believe that as we celebrate these 60 years of relationship between our two countries, we we also celebrate the opportunities that come with the friendship that exists between our two countries. And as you have said correctly, the space around artificial intelligence, space around cybersecurity, and investments that come with it, we are expanding our footprint in the digital space.
Also at the White House, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden unveiled plans for Thursday's White House State Dinner.
So tomorrow night, we mark the 60th anniversary of the United States partnership with Kenya with an elegant dinner under the stars in a pavilion made almost entirely of glass, looking up at our one sky. While outside, night surrounds us, inside, guests will be brought together over the glow of candles in a space saturated with warm pinks and reds. The night will feature special performances to honor President and First Lady Ruto's love of gospel and country music, the amazing Howard Gospel Choir, and the incredible Brad Paisley. As guests leave their path illuminated by our one moon, I hope they will be filled with the same warmth that I felt on my visits to Kenya, that of a friendship that will endure.
The state dinner in honor of President Ruto and First Lady Rachel Ruto will feature cuisines from both Kenya and the US, prepared by decorated chefs of the White House.
Thank you.
Washington is rolling out the full red carpet for the next 72 hours for President William Ruto and First Lady Rachel Ruto. George Maringa for TV 47 at Joint Base Andrews in Washington.
Well, thank you, George, for that. And those particular hours are counting down for tonight, Thursday night, as the whole state dinner will be prepared. We'll be giving you live coverage of that and more details on that, what to expect. Back to Kenya, matters politics, and Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is cutting an isolated figure at the top over his one man, one vote, one shilling push, which has been ruled out by the Commission for Revenue Allocation, terming it as impractical. The Deputy President seeking to endear himself to the Mount Kenya region, where he is facing internal rebellion and, surprisingly, among UD MPs. Apollo Kamau reports on a man and a siege.
One man, one vote, one shilling.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's ambitious campaign, one man, one vote, one shilling, which he has of late been his way back into the hearts of his detractors in the Mount Kenya region, has been dealt a blow by the government after the Commission for Revenue Allocation CRA termed its implementation impractical, as it will deny Kenyans equal allocation of resources.
From a professional perspective, one man, one shilling, one vote is just one parameter, and you can never
Kenya as a second in command in the Kenya Kwanza administration.
He finds himself in a very tough situation, meaning that at his home turf in central Kenya, he seems to be becoming very unpopular. And obviously within KK administration, he seems to be very unpopular. And so the only way he could find to endear himself to his backyard is to come up with things that are really polarizing and a bit more attractive to the central region.
On Tuesday, a tough-talking Gachagua termed Mount Kenya leaders opposing his one man, one vote, one shilling push as traitors amid outrage from leaders in the marginalized regions.
You actually own half of this government. You have no reason to complain. You have no reason to bring unnecessary squabbles to the national government. Tafadhali tuheshimiane. Heshimu rais, itisha hao viongozi maendeleo. Nyinyi ndio mna run government. Sisi wengine tumeshajikubali. Lakini muache ku blackmail rais wa
being selfish for pushing it. During a stopover rally in Kirinyaga on Tuesday, the DP extended an olive branch to retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, saying he is ready to work with him, seen as a last push to stamp his authority in the mountain as the region's kingpin.
Giuga ginya Uhuru wa Kenyatta ni mwana witu oke tunyitane hau nega inyu ko mundu mena bara nake ithege thurano getiathirire ithitoza mubira riu tunyitane twe nyumba emwe twendane tondu tungiaga kwendana twage kuiguana tugayukanio no tuone uru.
Unlikely. It's very unlikely for Rigathi Gachagua, even if he has a handshake with former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is now seen as the uniting figure for Mount Kenya, among many other leaders, that even if he shook hands with Rigathi Gachagua, yes, they will have peace. But I don't think that will be to the advantage of Rigathi Gachagua himself.
Apol Kamau, TV47.
Thank you, Apollo, for that. Education in Makaburini, Kangemi, Nairobi County might grind to a halt in the coming days as schools nestled in the area are enduring the strong stench of garbage that has been piling up for months and left uncollected, turning the Kangemi Memorial Recreational Park into a dump site. Mwege William toured the area where residents are contemplating to move, citing they are exposing themselves to health risks, with authorities turning a blind eye to the growing crisis.
Makaburini in Kangemi, home to thousands of middle-level income earners making a living in the counties of Nairobi and Kiambu, there is a growing concern. Mildred Muhavi, mother of two, has been balancing her meager income between providing daily meals to her young ones and paying hospital bills. For the past 1 month, Muhavi has been in and out of hospital with her 4-year-old child suffering from diarrhea. She suspects this has been occasioned by garbage piling up a few meters from her home.
Kataka imejaa, mainzi zimejaa kwa nyumba, hata sometimes siku ya maji kukuja, maji huwa inakuja, sasa hiyo sewage inaingia ndani, inabidi maji wakate, juu sewage imeingia ndani, hatuwezi kunywa.
Muhavi's worry is not an isolated one. Parents at nearby schools are contemplating of transferring their children to other learning institutions, lamenting that the learning environment in their present schools is no longer tenable, with an influx of houseflies, an unbearable stench emanating from the park turned to a dump site.
My kid anakula shule, anasema hapo inanuka. So at times the kid think that chakula ndio inanuka. Unaelewa? Lakini kumbe ni harufu ya the garbage.
Mimi mtoi wangu wako hapa, anasoma hapa karibu. Na kando na mimi mtoi wangu, kuna watoi wa watu wengine. Sababu hapa tunasanyana watu wengi. Watoi wa kila mtu wako hapa. Hii ni shule na hiyo ni shule. Hao wote ni watoto. Huwezi wachunga. Ile kitu wana inherit kutoka hapa huwezi jua. Ile ugonjwa iko kwa hii kitu huwezi jua. So sisi tunafanya tu kuvumilia kama mwanai.
Residents lambasting the Nairobi County government for sleeping on its job with no collection being recorded from the area for a year now.
Hii ni kazi gani kwa upande wa health? What is this? Alafu unaniambia Sakaja anafanya kazi. Kama anajua anapeana kazi kwa watu wa kampuni, ni abadilishe ama akuja angalie mwenye kazi anafanyika. Ona venye imeja.
Takataka inatoka mbali, si tu kwa hii eneo la Kangemi. Inatoka mbali na inakuja na yeko hapo. Na hiyo takataka ikikuja kuwekwa hapo haitolewi.
Hii takataka imekaa sana au wakiwachatiki, kwa hivyo wanakuja saa zingine tu na rodi 2-3, wanakuja wanatoa tu 2-3 wanaenda nazo. Wanakuja wanatoa chato hivyo. Sisi hata watu huko paka harufu yenyewe inatusumbua hata nyumba kwa nyumba.
Leaders and residents of Nairobi County in recent days called out the county government over poor management of garbage with piles of dirt left unattended in different parts of the Africa's city under the sun.
With the garbage menace in Makaburini of Kangemi, residents are now contemplating to either move out of this area or spend more on purchasing insecticide to deal with flies, even as they wait on concerned authorities to deal with the piling garbage. Mwege William, TV47 in Kangemi, Nairobi.
Thank you, Mwege William, for that. Now, time to get into a conversation today. It's a Thursday around this particular time. It's a legal Thursday, giving you tips on what you need to know around how your life revolves. Now, imagine this: you have someone, and you have a child. You're trying to conceive a child, and just after this child is conceived, and now mmefurahia, mko na mtoto. Both of you part ways. And so either of you decides, let me remove the other parent's name from this child's birth certificate. Have you ever thought about that? Well, this morning we'll give you these tips. And Silas Akiro, an advocate of the High Court, joins us this morning to help us understand this conversation, because it's one of those conversations that really keep continuing. Silas, good morning.
Good morning to Stanley.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, help us understand, first of all, your introduction for someone who hasn't seen you. This is the first time seeing you. And then walk us through, first of all, is it even legal to do this? Change and even alter the birth certificate of this child just when he or she is born?
Very good, Stanley. Thank you very much for once again having me in your studios. My name is Silas Akiro. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I work and practice in the style of Akiro and Associates Advocates. We are based at Westlands. To your question, Stanley, on whether it is legal to change a child's name or remove a child's name from the birth certificate. Stanley, in our country, we really adhere to the written laws. Mm-hmm. And as usual, we are going to align to you some of the laws that are applicable in this case. The first law, which is the chief law of the land, is the Constitution of Kenya. And here we're going to look at Article 45, which requires equal parental responsibility. And down we have the Children's Act, which also indicates the issues of the rights of a child, including to equal parenting and a right to naming. Mm-hmm. And particularly the document that you're going to really or chiefly gear into in terms of changing of names is Cap 285 of the laws of Kenya, which is the Registration of Documents Act. Now, whether it is legal or illegal, it is a question of the parameters. Why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. But remember, if a child's name at birth contains both parents, it will be difficult for you to convince the registrar of documents that now you need to remove this man from the child's birth certificate. In that, under Article 45 and under the sections of the Children's Act, this child has a right to equal parenting. The documentation needs to indicate who the mother and who the father is. While it will be easy for you to add a child's name into the birth certificate upon birth or after birth, it will be difficult for you to remove the name of the father from the birth certificate after including the name of the father, and then now you're like, oh, we parted ways, let this man out of my child's birth certificate. It will be very difficult for you afterwards.
Okay, a quick one. Does the Constitution provide the timelines for naming of this child? Because, well, both parents, or even, let's say, the mother knew this child is coming all this 9 months. So does now the Constitution provide that you should have provided the name at this specific time? How does that work legally?
While the Constitution is a skeletal document, it really underscores how legislations are supposed to be made. There is no express provisions on the timelines and all the timings of of how this child is supposed to be named. However, under the Children's Act, the enabling regulations, and Cap 285, a child has to be given a name and a birth certificate procured within 2 years. After 2 years, then you'll have to go the rigorous legal process. Before 2 years, you can always make these amendments by simply visiting these offices. But after 2 years, then the rigorous legal procedures, which we're going to look into details on how now the processes of doing these changes are coming up.
Oh, yes. Yes. Right. So now that you've opened that tin for us, back at home, wherever you're watching us from, now you're really open to talk to us. And our question for you today is, do you think parents should change, alter the name of the name of the child on the birth certificate? We've posted that question on our Facebook page as well as X page. TV47 News, that is on X. TV47KE on Facebook. You can head there and talk to us. There are a couple of comments right here. The first one here that I can see, Wamuyu Mukuba says, a kid's name is special. Given at birth, when it's changed, it's no longer special. It loses the meaning and brings in a lot of confusion. I won't advocate for it, but again, it's an individual's choice. What happens when you get back together somewhere down the line? That's according to Wamuyu Mukumbu. A couple of them there will be taking a look at them tukiendelea on them. But then you're also open to ask Wakili any kind of question you have regarding all this, altering this birth certificate of the child just because you separated, just because you're divorced on the same. 0795 045 864 is the number to call us live. I hope you've saved that number so that you can call us live. When you call us live, tell us your name, where you're calling us from, and be as audible as possible. Zima TV na upunguze mute too, and just have your TV off so that tuongee vizuri. Or you can also text us. 0793-267-279 is our WhatsApp number. Tupigie simu tuambie uko na nini ya kutuambia, or all those questions. Now that we have understood that whole is actually legal for the 2 years. So let's break it down vizuri. Because the reason I was asking that is because in a scenario where the couple wasn't, they were not married, they were dating, but then the mother to be tells the man, we're expecting, the child. And the man says, hey, uko sure ni yangu. And as the common street, word goes, anaruka. The man doesn't want anything to do with this child. So 9 months later, the child is born. And on the birth certificate, the Cornelius slot here, the father. So what happens in, some of the scenarios when it's a single mom, conceiving, and now the birth certificate has to be filled. Walk us through all that.
Well, Stanley, once a child is born and the mother feels like, because the father did not accompany her in this whole process or work her in this whole process of child labor, the law is now optional for the child's father to be included. This is to accommodate these hit and run parents, or the ones that we have now called deadbeat fathers. It is not a must that they appear on the birth certificate. Under their name normally appears an XXX. However, if at a later time...
Yes. Okay, I'm being told we already have callers. You can hold that bit so that to support your train of thought on the same. Let's hear from Felix. Felix, habari asubuhi, natupigia ukiwa wapi? Hello, Felix. Habari asubuhi. Felix, if you can hear me, just mute your TV or have it off and talk to us. Okay, ni kama Felix ameogopa kuuliza swali. Felix, usiogope, just talk to us. And also, if you're listening to us this morning, or if you know someone who has been through all this, save this number, 0795 045 864. It's also on our bottom screens. Unazangalia, save that number and call us live. Mute your TV, have it off, and ask Wakili all those questions regarding altering the birth certificate of the child, if after separation, after divorce, on the same. Continue.
Well, now, as I was saying, Stanley, if this birth certificate's rectification, it does not involve a change of name, but a mere inclusion of the excluded father's name into the birth certificate, then the parents, or rather the mother, will apply for birth certificate rectification, of which they will now appear before the registrar of births, and there will be some questioning that will be given to both parents.
Allow me to again cut you short there. Let's pick this call from all the way to Narok. Enoch, habari asubuhi.
Salama sana.
Yes, I hope watu wa Narok mko salama. Kuna swali au maoni for us?
Swali niko nayo.
Yes, uliza.
What if maybe ulipata msichana?
What if umepata?
Ukapata ready, ukampenda na ako na watoto.
Okay.
na sisi redi hawa watoto hawakuwa na party certificate.
Okay.
So ukawatafutia. After some time, so she got married to another man, akakuacha.
Okay.
So kuna shida hapo ama
I don't know, Wakil, have you got his question before he hangs up?
Quite is unclear, but nimesikia kuna bibi and
na watoto si wako
na watoto amekuja na watoto.
Okay.
Maybe shule ulikuwa unapeleka shule.
Yes.
Ikakuwa na demand ya birth certificate, dada ulikuwa umeshampenda, sio umependa na watoto.
Yes. No.
So ikabidi watafutie birth certificate.
Okay, I've gotten the question now.
Okay. Okay, asante sana Enoch kutoka Narok, salimia watu wa Narok.
Asante.
Okay.
Yes, Stanley, you remember the other time we were talking about the issues of the rights of non-biological children in one of your shows.
Oh, yes, yes.
So his question relates to that. The children are not yours, but then you're married to this woman who has come with children. If you take them in as your own children, your names will not appear into their birth certificate except if you go through the adoption procedures. You have to go through the adoption procedures where the father's part will appear adoptive father. You will be allowed to adopt these children legally. But if you do not go through that procedure and then you assume that you're the father of these children, then you shall be committing a law. I mean, you shall be committing an offense under the law, except when these children become part and parcel of your family, albeit your name not appearing in their documentations, even including adoption.
Right.
At succession, then these children will have a right. Because succession, we do not look at birthright, we look at dependency.
Okay.
If you took them in and they were depending on you, then you'll have to take care of these children. For example, you're saying that he's been taking them to school, then he has created what we call legitimate expectations on these children. And so the children expect school fees from him, they expect food from him, clothing from him, shelter and everything that is required under the Children's Act. And so you cannot abrogate these rights. But if for a short while the woman leaves you and goes with her children, then you transfer this right to the next man that to whom the woman passes the responsibility to.
Right.
Yes.
And just to extrapolate his question, now for such a man, is he valid to want his name to appear on the birth certificate of these children?
Well, he may want his name to appear, and just like I said, he'll have to go through the rigorous procedures of adoption.
Okay.
Adoption could be somebody else or member of the family. Like him now is an adoptive father. He's adopted the children into his own.
Okay.
So then the name will appear in the birth certificate as an adoptive father, a DP father.
Okay.
Then there's always signed father, signed mother, and then adoptive father.
Right.
Yes, but then he has to go through the rigorous procedures of adoption.
Right.
Yes.
So before end of call, you were walking us through the process of, let's say, for example, it's a lady who doesn't wish to include the biological father into the birth certificate. But then before we continue, naambia kuna mtu wa Machakos. Jina yake nani? Joseph. Yes.
Joseph.
Okay, habari ya asubuhi Joseph.
Mzuri sana.
Watu wa Machakos mnaendeleaje?
Tuko salama, tunang'ang'ana tu.
Yes, napenda venye uko audible vizuri. Uko na swali au uko na maoni?
Yes, niko na swali.
Yes.
I have a friend ambaye kazini yake alizaa mtoto.
Okay.
Alafu akakufa through accident.
All right.
So alikufa mtoto akiwa na miezi 6.
Okay.
Then wakati wa mazishi they were expecting to see the father. But the father hakukuja.
Okay.
Na mpaka saa hizi mtoto wako na 2 years and hawajaiwa na baba ya mtoto.
Okay.
So wanataka kutoa jina ya baba because huyo baba hawajaimuona. Na huyu na hawawezi weka mtoto jina ya baba hawamjui.
Okay.
So ningependa wakili atuelezee because ni kitu inawasumbua, wanataka because baba okay msichana ni Mkamba.
Okay.
he was married to a Mluya.
Okay.
So hawamjui totally, so wako na shida ya kuweka mtoto kwa jina ya mtu hawamjui.
Right.
So hapo anaweza kubika.
Sawa. Okay, before he cuts, do you have an extra question to him?
No, not really. I captured him clearly.
Okay. So asante sana Joseph, salimia watu wa Machakos. To him, and I believe what he's asking was something that you were heading to, because I mean you're trying to now understand, I mean, the same.
Exactly.
I mean, for a lady who, well, the biological father doesn't appear on the birth certificate.
Now, for him, if I got him clearly, the friend got married to a Luya guy, and the child is 2 years. The Luya guy hasn't appeared and is presumably, or rather he's confirmed the Luya guy is dead, and now they would wish to remove this Luya guy's name from the birth certificate. Now the question now is this a street slang, ajuaye baba ni mama. So the mother has to ascertain or assure the registrar, or confirm to the registrar on, first of all, why she included this guy into the child's birth certificate, and why she believes that now this guy is not the biological father of the child. If the registrar is satisfied that the person whose name appears into the register of birth certificate as the father is indeed not the biological father of the child, then the registrar will have no otherwise but to rectify the birth certificate by striking out this father's name from the birth certificate. However, if the registrar is not convinced, remember we said that all this flows from Article 45 of the Constitution of Kenya, where the child has a right to equal parental responsibility. And so the father and the mother has to appear in this birth certificate if they are known. So if the mother chooses not to identify the father, well and good. But where the mother has correctly identified the father and has included the father into the birth certificate, then the procedures of striking out this father from the birth certificate, remember Kenya is very, very strict on alteration of documents. There must be elaborate procedures on how to alter documents that are already produced by the government. And so striking out the Luya guy from the birth certificate is a burden on the mother to prove to the registrar why the Luya was included and why now the Luya has to be struck out.
Okay.
If the mother says that this is not the father, then what the mother needs to do is to simply produce the registrar the actual father.
Okay.
And maybe if the father is not willing to come, but so long as there is a connection between the guy who is being alluded to be the father and the child, then the Luya guy can be struck out and the father be included.
So what if it's now the other side? The mother passed away when this child was 9 months. Now 2 years later, the family, because they hadn't seen the father, so 2 years later they're still wondering who's the father, because they've never seen him. They don't know because the mother has passed away. I think according to Joseph. So now what happens, because the family hasn't ever seen the father, the one person who is going to tell them who the father is has passed away. So what happens? And they're really trying to now write on the birth certificate.
Remember, we began by saying that while the mother's name has to appear in the birth certificate, the father's name, if not provided by the mother, is not a must. The Ministry of Interior and National Coordination of National Government gave that regulation, just forgetting the name of the regulation, where it will not be mandatory for the father's name to be included in the birth certificate.
There's another caller around Nairobi. What's your name and where are you calling us from, specifically Nairobi?
My name is Nancy.
Nancy, habari asubuhi.
Salama sana.
I hope watu pali huko wako salama.
Kila mtu tuko salama, tunashukuru Mungu.
Asante sana for calling us. Do you have a question or an opinion?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
I work for the Directorate of Children as a volunteer.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. And in many occasions,
okay,
unapata kuna watoto wale wametupwa wanapatikana, wamezaliwa na wameachwa nje alafu wanapelekwa kwa CCIs.
Okay.
Then this child amebringiwa pale, ama wengine wako wale street families. Mtoto amekuwa ajui wazazi, ajui kula alitoka. Apparently, unajua sheria siku hizi inasema mtoto akipelekwa shule lazima kuwe na birth certificate.
Okay.
So my question is, huyu mtoto ambaye yako kwa CCI, akipata birth certificate anaipata na jina ya nani ndiye aende kwa shule? Niseme kama zile ma CCIs hazina shule, zingine ziko shule kama hii Mogra wako na shule yao, the one which is at Muthaiga.
Yes.
But zingine zote hazina mashule. So how does this child get this birth certificate? Na akiipata alafu akuje attain miaka 18 ajue watu wao.
Okay.
What will happen kwenda kutoa ile jina ndio sasa weke either jina mama yake ama baba yake, because definitely mtoto hakuji duniani peke yake. That is my question. 2, mtoto amekuwa kama ni msichana for instance ameenda kuolewa.
Okay.
Na ile jina ilikuwa pale labda ni ya aliweka, kama there is a case that I was handling, this lady aliolewa customary, ameshapata watoto, but now they wanted to formalize their wedding. So alipoenda kwa e-citizen akajaza, akaweka ile majina 3 ile aliweka kwa documents zake za shule. So it was rejected. So kukawa issue ya hii mambo na deed poll. So nilikuwa nataka niulize wakili, hii mambo na deed poll kuna wale hawawezi, because I hear it is 60,000 na 3 months. Na huyu ni mtu ambaye birth certificate yake ilikuwa bila jina ya baba, but the friend to the mother mwenye aliwalea, this lady decided alipofika 18 ali include jina ya huyu mtu, lakini kwa birth certificate hakuna. So now she was being told to go for a deed poll, na wengine hawajui deed poll. So maybe wakili atuelezee hizo vitu mbili, hawa watoto wenye wanapelekwa kwa CCIs na hawa wenye wanataka kuchange jina wanaambiwa waende for deed poll.
Alright.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Asante sana Nancy kutoka Nairobi. Thank you for calling us. Remember the number is 0795-045-864 to call us live. If you want to, well, text us on WhatsApp 0793-267-279. There are a couple of people calling us on the WhatsApp number. I'll have to decline to nipigine hiyo ingine. But anyway, for the 2 questions, I know for the deed poll, we'll get to that. You could answer for the CCI before we now dive deeper into the other ones for the deed poll and how really expensive it is.
All right. Now, Stanley, on this, I would call it an invention that eloped the drafters of Cap 285. And as journalist as you are, then you can also enlighten Parliament onto the necessity of such an amendment on this law to enable these children who do not have their parents known to be able to find a procedural way of having to include, of having to acquire these birth certificates and or an exemption from the requirement of a birth certificate until the parents are ascertained at whatever age. As it is right now, it is difficult for you to just put in the name of any human being onto your birth certificate unless there is ascertainment of the same, of which the burden to ascertain that is always left to the mother. And so for them to be able to be taken to school, then it is usually a question of the local authority, because the people who are always in charge of these children who are the street children or children in need of care and protection are always the local authority. We have the area chief, the ACCs, the DOs, and we talk about the children's officers themselves. So they usually have some letters which they can always write to the Ministry of Education to have a pass on that. But it is a question of Parliament having to look at Cap 285 and consider these particular children and or include also amendment into the Children's Act.
Right. There are a couple of questions and there are quite a number of them stripping.
I understand.
I'll have to walk you through some of them.
Okay.
Even before we have more callers.
Right.
So the first one, hello, I'm Petro from Kerugoya, niko na birth certificate ya mtoi na jina ni langu. Haliko then pia jina lake waliandika vibaya. So venye nilienda kwa ofisi za birth certificate, waliniambia nitoe 3K nibadilishe majina, so nimetaka kujua inawezekana au la. Juu mtoi alizaliwa kule Kitale.
Oh. Well, for children born in hospital, it is quite easy because you go get that birth notification, and of course, then you move to the birth offices.
So before you continue, what's detailed in the birth notification?
Now, the details of the birth notification are just the name of the child, the name of the mother, and the father. So just a notification that there is some birth that has taken place here.
So if either the name of the father isn't known, so what happens?
If the name of the father isn't known, like we said, there is that exemption from the father's name.
So
but the mother's name
has,
yes.
Okay,
will have that XXX.
Okay.
Then with the notification, then you proceed to register of births and deaths, of course, on the birth side, to acquire the birth certificate for the child. And so if the father's name is not known, or rather the mother prefers not to include the father's name in the birth certificate, then it will not burden the registrar of births to demand the name of the father. The child will just be given a birth certificate with the father's name, and in the birth certificate as XXXX.
Okay.
Yes. So back to the question. Or the explanation I was giving?
Yeah.
Yes, so I was saying that once a child is still below 2 years, then you can simply walk into the births and deaths offices. Of course, the births department, we're talking about births now. And a request for amendment of the details. There is always the form of amendment. And if it requires an interview for both parents and or the singular parent who wishes to do a rectification of the child's details, then an appointment will be booked for you to be able to see the registrar of births and death of births, so that you'll answer a few questions, and if the registrar is satisfied as to the rectification you are requesting, then the same will be effected.
Right.
But another Kenyan is talking about 3,000. Remember, this is Kenya.
Yes. I was actually now heading there. Before I take, mwingine ameandika paragraph, and there's so many even on Facebook. And this also goes back to what Nancy from Nairobi was asking about the deed poll.
The deed poll.
And there's so many Kenyans on social saying how much the price is. Some would probably quote 30K, 50K. Walk us through all this. How much money is to be paid for specific elements? Let's say for the when you walk into the birth certificate, how much money should I be working with, and also even for the deed poll?
Well, in preparation of a deed poll, first of all, we are now talking about name change. This is not mere rectification. But this entails a serious alteration of the details of a birth certificate. And now the procedures for any individual above 2 years are as follows. You will require the following documents first of all.
Could you hold a minute for the documents? Let me even note them down. Ndio tukirudi after this call. Nicholas kutoka Umoja. Nicholas, habari asubuhi?
Salama sana boss. Habari zenu hapo?
Yes, sisi tuko salama. I hope watu wa Umoja mko na umoja.
Yeah, we thank God. All is well.
Yes. Uko na swali au maoni?
Yeah, niko na maoni, niko na swali na pia niko na maoni.
Yes, tafadhali.
So, swali ya kwanza ningependa kuuliza what is so important of changing the name of the child? Yeah, because I'm asking that because there is some cases umekuwa ukisikia whereby a mother bibi anaachana na bwana then anaenda anapata another marriage,
okay,
then ana change jina ya mtoto alafu pia in that process pia unapata labda ametoka kwa hiyo marriage. So mtoto, because mtoto bado ni mdogo, so majina atakuwa akiendelea akichange ama kutakuwa aje? Then ya pili unasikia labda mahali alitoka, na umesikia hizi maneno because unapata mama alitoka kwa bwana kwa ndoa because of need, mambo ya financial status nini. Alafu unapata labda huyo mzee amekuja akafaulu. Alafu mama anataka kurudi. In that process alikuwa amechange jina ya mtoto.
Okay.
So how does it go about that?
Okay.
Thank you, that's all.
So asante Nicholas, salimia watu umoja. Wakili, how really important is changing even the name? What's so important of changing this name?
Okay, let me answer Nicholas like this. Remember, there are written down procedures and who is supposed to appear on the child's birth certificate. It is not about if I leave this man, I change here. If I leave this man, I change here. It is a question of who is the biological father of the child. So if Mr. Akiro is the father of the child, but then Akiro's wife leaves Akiro and then goes to another man. So it is incumbent upon the woman to convince the registrar that Akiro wasn't the biological father of this child.
Okay.
And so the man that I am with currently is the biological father of the child.
Okay.
Then in that, maybe DNA tests will have to be required.
Okay.
Paternity test to be done.
Okay.
And if the registrar is convinced as per the forensic examinations or the paternity tests that indeed Mr. Akiro wasn't the father of the child, that this guy is the father of the child, then the child's father will be changed from Akiro to the next man.
Right.
However, if at any given point the numerous men that this woman goes to are not the biological parents of these fathers of this child,
okay,
but then the first man whose name appears on the birth certificate is concluded as the biological father of the child, then there is nobody who will be able to remove Akiro's name from the birth certificate.
Okay.
But if Akiro wasn't added, but then there is an adoption that takes place. We remember we said that a man can acquire, can take in a woman with his or her children. If at any given point a man undergoes adoption procedures,
okay,
and his name appears as adoptive father,
right,
then the woman moves to the next person,
right,
and wishes to strike out the first adoptive father, then
okay, yeah,
then it will be incumbent upon the adoptive father to relinquish his adoptive rights,
right,
for the next.
Okay. I hope Nicholas umepata jibu ya hiyo. Let's pick another call here. Florida.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Unatupiga ukiwa wapi?
Oh. Okay, napiga simu kutoka Kimbo.
Aha, okay. Tuambie.
Okay, there is this question that I want to ask.
Yes.
It has been troubling me for the longest.
Okay.
Okay, if I want to change the birth certificate,
okay,
like we got divorced with my husband,
okay,
and I want to change the name, not the name, the surname of my kids so that they can bear my name.
okay,
how can I go about it?
Right. Asante sana.
Yeah.
Asante sana Florida. Thank you for
Okay,
calling.
thank
Salimia
you.
sana watu wa Kimbo. So even as you also answer the same, there's a whole very important bit of the documents for the deed poll. So you can answer Florida's question, which I believe you've touched on as well, and then we get to the documents.
Good. Just to remind Florida, her question has actually been answered before if she was keen. The father's name, once put in the birth certificate, will be difficult to be removed from the birth certificate. You'll have to prove that this is not the biological father of the child. If the question on biological parenthood is answered to the negative, then that man will have to be struck off. There then you can now have your surname included. But if you rationally included this man as the father of the child, remember Article 45 of the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, which guarantees this child's rights to both parents, equal parental responsibility. You cannot purport, after including this man's name into the children's birth certificate, that you want to strike them off, because maybe you have fallen out with a man. You are falling out with a man is your own marital doings. They shouldn't affect the child. Remember the best interest of the child. If by any chance you are demised, your adoptive, the adoptive parents do not wish to share anything with them.
Right.
You see, you shall have denied these children an opportunity to be cared for by their biological father.
Okay.
So it will be difficult once you add their names. You have to convince the registrar.
All right.
But if their names were not added before, then you have a leeway not to add the name of the father.
All right.
You can now take over the responsibility of having your surname given to them.
Right. Okay, so now for the next one, before we have more callers, for the deed poll, because I know a majority of questions will be regarding that.
Exactly.
Will be calling to understand that whole bit.
Exactly.
So just to clear the air for them.
Yes.
You're trying to tusianze kuwa na maswali mengine yamerudiana.
Sure. So Stanley, deed poll regards the change of a name. You're changing from A to B.
Okay.
And the procedures, there are certain documentations before we even go to the procedures. Let's delve into the substance.
Okay.
What does the law require?
Right. And well, I'm seeing time has really flown.
I see.
Because of all kind of questions.
Exactly.
So hopefully, because I see we have about 3 minutes.
All right.
To wrap it up. So
okay.
kindly do it in like 2 minutes before we get your final thoughts.
Exactly. So you will need to visit a lawyer's chambers. The advocate will prepare for you the deed poll, which will include a declaration that your name currently is AB, and you would wish to change it to CD. And so with that, you will require a letter from the area chief, the local chief, place where you are born, not where you reside.
Okay.
Place where you are born. Confirm that the chief will confirm that he knows you or she knows you.
Okay.
And then you'll also require a declaration from somebody, an acquaintance, somebody who has known you for a period of 10 years. If you are, your age is below 10 years, then somebody must have known you for the period of your age.
Okay.
After that declaration and the chief's letter and the acquaintance witness statement, then you will now need to take these documents to the Ministry of Lands. That is where the registrar of documents are. I remember my first client, I told my client that I'm going to the Ministry of Land. Akasema, land tena. No, that is where the registrar of documents is.
Okay.
So there will be an assessment and franking of these documents before you pay the stamp duty there.
Right.
And then you proceed to the government press or government printers for gazettement of your name. Remember, the importance of gazettement is there are those who change their names because they are thieves. They have stolen something and now they want to disguise themselves. So the public has to be notified that Mr. Akiro, who is formerly Silas Akiro, is now changing to Akiro Owino. So that those who had whom he had debts can now follow up with the new name. So that has to take 30 days. If there is an objection as to the registration, then the registrar will decline or would hear that. In some circumstances,
and briefly,
yes, in some circumstances, you can approach the court directly to make orders, direct orders, and to